Let's talk about 7 glaring grammar mistakes that I hear English learners make in spoken English. And I say that these mistakes are glaring because they're simple mistakes, they're pretty common, and they're easily noticeable. When I hear these mistakes, it's easy to notice. And the first thing I would say is that I would always encourage you to just keep speaking, practice speaking. Don't worry about making mistakes. But I think it is important to try and identify your mistakes, understand them so that you can correct them in the future. And that's really what this lesson is all about. I want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Wes. The channel is Interactive English. It's all about trying to help you reach your fluency goals. So if that is what you would like to do, please subscribe, turn on notifications so that you will learn about future lessons. The first mistake that I may hear an English learner make is they may say something like, "I'm boring." And in this case, we're really talking about the difference between ed adjectives and ing adjectives. And I think that most of the time, learners make the mistake of using an ing adjective when they should use the ed. And they would say something like, "I'm boring," or "I'm confusing," or "I'm exciting," when they're trying to talk about the way they feel. And for this one, in order to correct it, just follow the rule. There is a grammar rule that you can follow, and that is you should use ed adjectives when describing a feeling or an emotion. And you should use ing adjectives when describing a thing, a situation, or a person's characteristic. So it's very different to say, well, he's boring versus he's bored. If he's bored, then you're just saying, well, he's not interested in what's happening. If you say he's boring, well, then you're talking about his personality. So just keep that in mind and try to follow the rule. The next mistake that I may hear learners make is they would say something like, "I am agree." And in this case, they're adding the verb to be when it's not needed. It's unnecessary. And I think this could be the result of directly translating from your native language to English. So in Spanish, I think it's common that somebody would say, "Estoy de acuerdo." But if we're going to directly translate that into English, it's really like you're saying, "I'm in agreement." But I think most of the time, people would just say, "I agree," or "I agree with you." You can say "I'm in agreement." It's a little more formal. But just know that if you are translating from your language into English, the grammar may not always be the same. But when you are able to identify some of the mistakes that you may be making in conversation, I think the best way to stop making these mistakes is to get more practice. And a wonderful way to get more practice and learn from an English teacher is to use italki, which is the sponsor of today's lesson. So italki is where you can find teachers from all over the world and take lessons in over 150 languages. And one great thing about italki is that the lessons are one-on-one, which means that you get to focus on your learning goals. You can learn at your own pace, you can take classes anytime from anywhere, and you'll get feedback from qualified professional teachers. There is no subscription, there is no commitment, you just pay per lesson. When you click on the link and sign up, just choose an English teacher, select a time and date that's convenient for you, and then you are practicing and improving your English skills. It's that simple. So if you would like to develop your English skills, check out italki. You can click on that link and take advantage of this special offer. Let's get back to our lesson and talk more about some of those glaring grammar mistakes. And well, the next one is I may hear somebody say something like, "Today was more hot than yesterday." And in this case, learners are just incorrectly using comparatives and superlatives. And to be perfectly honest, I also hear native speakers make these mistakes quite often. I've made these mistakes. Sometimes I'm having a conversation and I will catch myself making a mistake and I realize that and would think, wow, I just screwed that up. So with this one, again, there is a rule that you can follow, so it's good to know the rule. So in general, with shorter one-syllable words, you're going to use ER to make the comparative, hotter than, spicier than, and use EST to make the superlative. the happiest, the strangest. With bigger words, use more to make the comparative more beautiful than, more famous than, and use most to make the superlative, the most successful, the most exciting. So what are some of the mistakes? I think most of the time they happen with those shorter one-syllable words, and somebody could just say like more hot. Today was more hot than yesterday. They're using more with that short word instead of just saying hotter. Or maybe they use more and the ER and say something like more spicier. My food was more spicier than yours, instead of just saying spicier. Now, even though I think I hear most mistakes being made with the comparative form, it also happens with superlatives as well. Somebody may say most happy. This is the most happy I've seen her in a long time, instead of just saying happiest. Or again, somebody may use most with the EST, like most strangest. This is the most strangest day ever, instead of just saying strangest. So just follow the rules. That's what I would encourage you to do, and it's going to help you correct any of these mistakes. The next mistake that I hear, somebody could say something like, I'm interested about learning English. And they're just using the wrong preposition. And I know prepositions, there's many of them: in, on, at, over, through. And it's a very common mistake, but the one thing I would say about this is that even if you make a mistake and you use the wrong preposition, it's not going to hurt somebody else's ability to understand what you're trying to say. So even though somebody may make a mistake and say, I'm interested about learning English, I still understand what they're trying to say. They should be using the preposition in. Interested is an adjective that's often followed by the preposition in. You're interested in something. Now, what's the best way to correct this and to improve and not use the wrong preposition? Well, I think that you first need to just get more exposure to the language, get more speaking practice, and I think it is especially important that you read, because when you read, you see the language, you see the prepositions being used correctly, and it's like you're learning them passively, so that when it actually comes time to use these prepositions in conversation, you're more likely to use them correctly. So just spend a little more time reading. The next mistake that I hear learners make is just saying things like he don't or she don't, which is a simple subject-verb agreement mistake. It's very common. And I understand that when you're having a conversation, you may be trying to speak quickly and express your thoughts and ideas and not really focus too much on the grammar. And that is what I would encourage you to do. And that's why I think it's easy to make a simple mistake like this and say he don't or she don't instead of he doesn't or she doesn't. And I think when it comes to correcting this, again, I think you get more exposure to the language, you get more practice listening and reading. I think when it comes time to actually use the language and use the subject and the verb correctly, you'll be able to do this naturally. Then I may hear learners say something like, I enjoy to go. And this is a mistake because you're following the verb enjoy with the infinitive. It is a mistake when it comes to gerunds and infinitives. And I know this can be a little confusing because some verbs are followed by the gerund. I could ask you a question and say, do you feel like watching another video lesson? And you would follow feel like with the gerund, feel like watching. And there are other verbs that you're going to follow with an infinitive. I want to ask you a favor. I want to ask. And that favor would be to go ahead and hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it. And then there are other verbs that you can follow with either a gerund or an infinitive. I told you, I know it can be confusing. So I could say, you like learning English, like learning. And I like to teach you English, like to teach. So you can follow the verb like with either the gerund or infinitive. And I think there are quite a few common verbs in which you could use either one. The challenge is when you have some of those common verbs in which you either need to use only a gerund or an infinitive. So I understand why somebody may make the mistake and they say, well, I enjoy to go instead of I enjoy going. And I think it makes it a little trickier because, well, like and enjoy, those are verbs with a similar meaning. So with like, you can use either one, but with enjoy, you're going to follow it with the gerund. If you search online, there are lists that will tell you, like, well, which verbs are followed by gerunds, infinitives, or even both. I've even done a lesson on gerunds and infinitives. I'll put it up here somewhere. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Go online, get some more practice. It's going to help. Another mistake that I hear learners make would be something like this. I went to dinner with my mother. I ate the chicken and he ate a salad. So I'm talking about misgendering pronouns. If learners are talking about a man, I may hear them say she or her. And if talking about a woman, I may hear them say he or him. And I think this can happen because of people's native language. Different languages treat pronouns differently. This happens most often when people are just trying to speak quickly and naturally, and you're not focusing on the individual words, but you're focusing on the ideas that you're trying to share. And again, that is what I would encourage you to do. Focus on sharing your ideas and not worry too much about the individual words. So the best way to correct this and just work this out of your system is to get more speaking practice. I hope that with this lesson, I've given you something to think about because as I said at the very beginning, it's okay to make these mistakes, but if you're able to identify them and understand them, that's going to help you avoid making these mistakes in the future. If you enjoyed this lesson, please hit that like button. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. So long.